However, I'm Paul McGuire Grimes. The takedown of Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein was something that rocked the industry and felt like a long time coming. The new film, She Said, takes an investigative eye into how that all happened. It's in theaters and on video on demand, and I want to talk about it. This is Paul's trip to the movies. She Said is based on the book of the same name, written by New York Times reporters Jodi Kantor, who's played by Zoe Kazan, and Megan Twohey, who's played by Carey Mulligan. They really led the charge in reporting this story. The film picks up with Megan Twohey finishing a piece on the allegations made against President Donald Trump, only to find that voters weren't at all swayed by the victim's statements. Jodi Kantor decides to explore systemic sexism in Hollywood after Rose McGowan's bombshell allegations against Harvey Weinstein. It was only after Bill O'Reilly was fired at Fox News for similar allegations did Jodi Kantor actually think that something could happen with Harvey Weinstein. She partners with Megan Twohey to interview actresses and former employees at Weinstein's company Miramax to find out the truth of what actually happened with her former boss. The film also stars Patricia Clarkson, Andre Braugher, Samantha Morton, and Jennifer Ehle. She Said follows in the line of great films about journalism like All the President's Men, Spotlight, and The Post. And films like this are so rare, so it's hard not to think about this when you're watching She Said. This film's scope seems really wide when you think about the effort that Kantor and Twohey gave to publishing their piece. Director Maria Schrader distills this down into two paths. One being how hard it is for women to tell their story, and two, the meticulous nature that a newspaper takes at publishing a story like this. Now, unlike the other films that I mentioned earlier, I think what's missing here is the drive and the urgency in the pacing that I know that these two women had in getting this story published. I didn't quite feel that ticking clock to a deadline like this story needed. It seems like Schrader wanted to allow time for the victims' stories to be told and for them to land, rather than rushing to the next scene. These statements have an impact, and having recognizable names involved, I think, makes what happened feel all the more real for our audience. We learn about the grooming tactics, the non-disclosure agreements that Weinstein used, and how he built this silence for which his victims and his network had to abide by. There's this sneaky thing that the camera does where it seems to linger on after the interview of a victim, as if to say that Weinstein or his people are always watching and are always a step ahead. She Said uses a mix of actresses like Samantha Morton and Jennifer Ehle playing victims to Ashley Judd, who's playing herself, and then having voiceover actors play Rose McGowan and Donald Trump. Samantha Morton is simply incredible at playing the exhaustion and the feeling of being partly worn down but not yet out of the ring with her character. And it felt like this real turning point in the movie, but then the rest of it just couldn't quite match the weight that Samantha Morton gave in this diner table scene. Carey Mulligan brings the tough, intimidating New Yorker out in Megan Twohey, while Zoe Kazan takes a softer, hopeful approach with Jodi Kantor. She Said may feel a bit stagnant in the middle, but these stories are worth hearing and are given really good attention that they deserve thanks to director Maria Schrader and her dedicated ensemble. There's a real sense of bravery and determination that the victims and the journalists in this situation have. And we need to hear these stories over and over, especially when there is outcry over fake news or the hashtag #MeToo movement. I'm giving She Said 4 out of 5 ticket stubs. If you like my review today, click subscribe on my YouTube channel, I guess some of the movie reviews, as well as my appearances on Twin Cities Live. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Paul's Movie Trip, and then go to my website, paulstriptothemovies.com, for even more reviews. Thank you so much for watching my review of She Said. This is Paul's Trip to the Movies.